Welcome to the Inside Out Money Podcast.
Can't even recognize this place. Too many pieces of our past mistakes.
Hi, I'm Maggie, and I believe real change starts from the inside out. So let's work together to improve our money and our lives from the inside out. We will explore all things money and our relationship with it. Join me each week with a rotating set of co-hosts, friends, and interviews. Let's jump in.
It's time, we going round and round and round.
Hey, Greg.
Hey, Maggie.
What's going on?
Not much. How are you doing?
I'm good. That's so nice the way you're like, how are you doing? Like I didn't just see you for the past 365 days every day, pretty much.
Well, a lot can change in the past 10 minutes even.
Yeah. Well, it's funny when I record with you, which is different than the other co-hosts, obviously, is I live with you. And we were just sitting on the couch talking about this episode and privately reflecting on some things. It's funny because then we go to two different rooms to record. So it's kind of like, okay, I go, Greg, go get in your closet and record, because he records in the closet in our bedroom, which is kind of like a little office closet. It's just funny that we then go separate to have a conversation. And I cut off our conversation on the couch. Greg was starting to tell me some of his insights. And I was like, no, I actually want to hear them live and in real time, fresh, right? I don't want it to be my second response to you where I'm then repeating myself. I want to just have this is going to be authentic. I mean, everything we do is authentic, but it's going to be a real-time conversation of us sharing our reflections on a year into early retirement that we haven't actually shared with each other yet, other than just the natural cadence of talking every day.
Yeah, I mean, we don't even know what we're walking into. I mean, I could be walking into you saying that your realization is that, you had way too much time with me and you're sick of me. And the listeners are going to hear it as fresh as I heard it. So
yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how this goes. No, I don't think there's going to be any big surprises. We talk about this fairly regularly as just part of our day-to-day lives because we have time together and we get to talk. But I do think we haven't sat down and stopped what we're doing to reflect upon the past year and have a really meaningful discussion. So I've actually been just personally wanting to have this discussion because it's a little bit of like an annual performance review for both of us. And I got a lot of things for you, Greg.
Yeah, please don't ever use that term again. That's why we left corporate America.
You're right.
But yeah, it is helpful to sit down and reflect a little, and even before recording, kind of thinking through it. And it is always helpful to just kind of sit down and a year out, say where are we? What have we learned over the last year, individually and collectively? And
look at that, we said collectively together. That was so cute.
I think it's good, and it's been interesting.
Yeah, it has been an interesting first year. Okay, so here's how this is going to roll. We are going to, before we even get into this episode, I would just like to take a moment to reflect upon the launch of Inside Out Money, because this is we're recording this pretty fresh. This is the first episode released post the 4 episodes we just released as part of the launch, which, by the way, for anyone who's confused, we are not releasing 4 episodes every week. I could not keep up with that. That was just a special so that everybody could experience all of the co-hosts the first week of launch. And then every week there will be an episode. And this first week is with Greg. So my point is, it's the Friday of Inside Out Money launching. And it's been a really awesome week. It's been a super busy week for me, and I was a little burnt out from all the things I had to do to launch. So I, like many projects I work on where I put so much time and energy into it to get to the launch, I'm spent by the time it's launched. And I've just been exhausted this whole week. And we've also just had a lot of stuff going on with kids and activities and other things. We'll get into some of that because it's part of my reflections. But my point is, Inside Out Money launched this week. Were you about to say something?
Well, yeah, I was just going to congratulate you on all of your hard work. There's just so much that goes on behind the scenes of getting the podcast to where it is now in a short timeline, and seeing you go from kind of just knowing, okay, I want to do something else, and having an idea of the concept, but really then ideating that to a specific title, logo, very specific idea of what you want to do with the podcast and who you want to bring on. It's been really cool. And I know you've worked very hard on it. I'm just proud of you and excited for you. And I know that it's not just you, there's 4 other co-hosts, but the work in ideating this and launching it was really on you. And you've just done such an awesome job on that. So
oh, thank you, Greg.
I'm excited for you.
I appreciate it. I wasn't even fishing for a compliment. I was going to read many of the nice notes that I've received from listeners this week. But you know what? It would be a lot because there literally have been probably 50 plus different notes and messages. And I posted many of them on Instagram. I just want to thank everybody who has taken the time to write a very personal note to me because it really means a lot. I read all of them. I've gotten text messages, I've gotten emails, I've gotten a bunch of DMs on Instagram and different people even tagging us. And it just really means a lot because this is a labor of love. I don't make any money off of this. I just appreciate everyone taking the time to leave a note. Many of you have also gone to leave a review on Apple Podcasts. A written review is super helpful. It helps other people to find the podcast and it vouches for the podcast. And so I appreciate those of you who have done that. And if you haven't done that and you are enjoying things so far, I would love for you to go do that. You can do it in the Apple Podcast app and you just scroll to the very bottom of the Inside Out Money page and you can actually leave a review and you click on written or leave a written review. I don't know. You click on something. It should be obvious when you get down there. Thank you so much. If you have taken the time to do that, or if you will take the time to do that, we appreciate it. But yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Greg. It's been a very busy week on the life front. And so I haven't had as much time to reflect on the launch itself. But even just taking a moment now, I am very proud of what I have created and we have created because though I have done a lot of the work myself, all of the co-hosts have been incredibly helpful emotionally and physically on recording episodes and ideating things and giving feedback along the way as I was concepting things. And so it really has just been a fun process with people I enjoy spending time with, which is the bonus. So thank you to you, Greg, to Erica, to Andrew, and to Liz, or Liz Gets Loaded, as some of you know her as, because you guys have all been awesome. And you guys have also been checking in on me this week and reflecting on the launch. So I appreciate it from everybody. So moving on from the podcast launch, let's talk about our first year of retirement. And like we were teeing up a little bit earlier, this is going to be a super unstructured discussion. We haven't yet had this discussion ourselves in any sort of an organized or thoughtful way. And this is kind of like our life right now, fully unstructured, right?
Yeah. That's well said.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. One thing I do want to start with, and I mentioned this briefly to Greg, but he hasn't even heard some of these specifics, is that, of course, I did this very last minute, so I only have a few things to share, but that's probably for the best because we don't have a ton of time to share this anyways. I went on the campFI Facebook group this morning and requested any year-end advice and thoughts from people because I found this group to be very helpful, and I actually don't engage with them enough. In general, I don't think we engage enough with other people in our similar circumstances, Greg. And it's one of my reflections that I'll talk about more later. But in a last minute is better than nothing, I guess, attempt, I put a post on this morning that basically just said, hey, we're recording this episode. And I did a post earlier in the year when we were kind of in a funky state. Remember, we were feeling, it was maybe like 4 or 5 months in.
Right. I do remember that.
And we got amazing advice and comments. I could turn that into an entire episode, actually.
Well, and even prior to that post, we went to campFI in, I think it was March or April of last year. It was perfect timing.
It was like a month before we retired.
Exactly. And we spoke to several people who'd been retired anywhere between a year and 2 years. And they all said this first year is going to be a little weird. It's going to have ups and downs and don't worry too much about how you're feeling.
They're like, don't get too in your head about it.
Right.
Which was crucial advice because I am in my head a lot. And if I hadn't been given that advice, I would have been like really spinning at times this year.
completely agree. And just having that knowledge ahead of time, when you did get in those times where you were feeling out of sorts or in your head, you could at least say, oh, this is just a part of the process. This is pretty normal. Many people experience that. And that alone helps so much, as opposed to just thinking, gosh, why am I feeling this way? I should be so happy. I'm so fortunate. And so we can get into more of that later. But yes, this group's been extremely helpful. So I'm curious to hear what feedback you got today.
Yeah, I agree, Greg. And I'll share that feedback in a second. One quick thing on that note about the feedback we got a while ago. If anyone's curious about some of the feelings we were having earlier in the year about our early retirement, we did a bunch of Friends on Fire episodes. I don't remember which time periods, but we did it like a month in, we did it 6 months in. And so we shared a lot of these feelings. So if you're curious to hear that and go back and listen, they were actually some pretty popular episodes because I've heard a lot of feedback from people that they really enjoy hearing about early retired life. And that there's not enough. There's a lot of people talking about getting to FI, but there's not a lot of people talking about what it's like on the other side. And so I'll put a link in the show notes to those episodes. Those are Friends on Fire episodes. And you can hear us talk more about what it was like then if you're curious to do that. So I got two specific things that I want to share from the post this morning, Greg. And this was me going to the campFI alumni group. By the way, campFI, for those who don't know, is organized by this awesome guy named Steven. I'll put a link to those events in the show notes also. And he hosts these events all around the US that are bringing together people who are interested in FI. And it's also people who have already retired, people who are just interested in it, people who are early on their journey, late on their journey, all over the place. A very diverse mix of life circumstances and ages and people. And I loved it and wanted to go to another one. I think we literally had a conflict every single campFI this year, all over the US. We had some conflict that we couldn't be there for. So I'm excited in 2024 to go to some campFIs, which we can talk about because it's one of the things I want to spend more time doing and one of my reflections. But it's an awesome event and it's like literally going to camp, like adult summer camp, and it's just super casual. It's my kind of event. I loved it on so many levels. And it's a small and intimate group also.
Yeah, it was great.
Okay. I will get into a couple of comments. I think like 5 times I've tried to say what I requested on campFI, but basically I just said, hey, we're now a year in. What advice would you have for us? So Jolene, which by the way, I love the name Jolene. I don't know Jolene, but after reading this blog post that she suggested, would like to be friends with her. So we're going to have to work on that, Greg. Jolene, who blogs at daretodrawdown.com, which is a great name. I will put a link in the show notes to her blog and to the specific post. But she said, congratulations on your 1-year anniversary. My 3-year quit anniversary is in a few days. I wrote this reflecting on my upcoming 3-year mark. And she wrote a post called Reflections on Early Retirement 3 years in. And it was a great post. It's very long. Well, it's not very long, but it's long enough. So I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to read a few quotes from this because it's interesting. I learned from entrepreneurs Alan and Katie Donegan that if you want an extraordinary life, you must build it. No one is handing out extraordinary lives. I just loved that quote about no one is handing out extraordinary lives. And then another thing she said was thinking about all the possible versions of me that can exist is exciting. Quitting my corporate gig allowed me to speed up and get to a future that was more in line with my values. I simply would not have had the time to be me if I had stayed on the corporate track. That is something I can very much relate to. We will come back to it, but I love that insight.
Yeah, I really resonate with that one.
Another thing she said is, no one is measuring my success except for myself. There won't be a performance review on my upcoming kitchen cabinet build. If it's a new hobby I lose interest in, I can simply sell the items on eBay or Facebook Marketplace and move on to my next interest. I love that because, Greg, you were just saying when I said annual performance review that you were like, I don't even like you referencing that.
Yeah.
Because it's something we both do not miss about work. I mean, I like the positive feedback because I was usually getting positive feedback in mine, but it was mixed in with constructive feedback when I was like, working my butt off. I don't mind constructive feedback. I think I don't mind it as much as you mind it, perhaps.
Well, true. I think it's also the way it's delivered, and that can be a whole nother topic. But when we work together, whether it's on this podcast or the real estate business, we're constantly providing feedback to one another, positive and constructive, but it comes across differently when it's the person you love, or maybe if it's a casual, someone that you enjoy working with, than when it's your corporate boss.
Yeah.
And it's
totally
corporatized and it's
Yeah, we
language
can
and-
like literally hug it out, Greg. And yeah, I did
Right.
not, I didn't hug it out at work. I mean, I really liked my old boss, but we didn't hug it out. Okay, last one. I've never missed my corporate identity. I struggled more with tampering down my high achiever tendencies in other areas. It's taken almost 3 years for me to decide to take on new challenges as projects and not as a means to make money. That was a huge one for me. Like, and again, we'll come back to some of these, but I wanted to note some of the thoughts that I particularly could relate to in her post. I mean, honestly, I could relate to all of them, but those were ones that just really spoke to me.
We pretty much could have just read her blog post in its entirety and called it a wrap.
We could have.
It was very well written, and I think we both identified with many of the things.
And another thing about her blog post, it was structured and organized in a way that this discussion shan't be. I don't think that was the right word, use of shan't, but this discussion won't be quite as structured and organized. Shout out to Jolene with Dare to Draw Down, and Greg and I would like to be friends with you and your husband. They do a lot of through hiking, so if you're ever in Georgia through hiking, let us know. We'll come hike with you and bring you sustenance on your hiking, replenishment, whatever they call it, trail magic. We'll bring some trail magic with us.
We'll join you for 4 miles of your hundreds of miles of hiking.
Exactly, yeah. Okay. There's actually been more comments on this since I even chose the 2 I want to read aloud. The other comment I want to read aloud is from Diana Merriam, who is the founder of Economy, which is also an event that I have major FOMO about because both times it's happened since I've known about it, I had like extreme conflicts during like the kids' final volleyball finals of the year and just things that I was like, I can't miss this. I have to put my family first on certain things. Anyways, there's just been big conflicts and I really am hoping to make it next year, Greg, with you. She said, congrats. I think the reward for early retirement for many of us is an existential crisis. I love that. She said more after that, but like that alone is we could just end there. For your entire life, much of your time was dictated by some kind of authority or schedule you didn't create. When you're handed the keys to the castle and now have full autonomy over time, and it can truly all be self-directed, many of us find this disorienting. On top of that, if you're burnt out, have any mental health issues, childhood trauma, or a dysregulated nervous system, early retirement creates just enough space in your life to completely fall apart. I'm laughing with her, by the way, at myself because this resonates a lot. When there isn't a busy schedule to distract you, you can't help but notice all the emotional stuff you buried for decades. Ask me how I know. It took me over 2 years to sort all this out, but I'm now finally able to fully enjoy the freedom of retiring early. That is powerful. Diana's always got great wisdom to drop on me and everyone around her, and I appreciate her for that and so many other things. So just a huge thank you for sharing that. And I just from the beginning where she says your reward is an existential crisis. She talks about a dysregulated nervous system. My therapist has used that term with me many times. I just, someone else replied to her post and said, exactly, I love that. And then said, Robert Chase, who I've seen, he said this to me in reply. He's someone in campFI, said to put it to me like this once. It's the first time in your life that you haven't had someone telling you what to do. So give yourself some grace and time to sort it all out. And I just really appreciate this community and that advice because that is the sort of stuff that's very helpful to hear as you're in your head making this massive life transition. And things aren't just unicorns and rainbows every day, right? I think that's one insight is it's not like we left our jobs and on day one, we were just like, oh, great, no stress. Life's happy all the time.
Well, I would almost disagree and say day one, you do feel like that. Day one is, oh my gosh, I don't have to work tomorrow. This is amazing. And it's sort of a high that fades. Just like anything, there's a new baseline. And that's where you start to feel kind of confused. And for me, at least, guilty because you've been, yes, we worked for this opportunity, but, still, I feel very fortunate and blessed that we have this opportunity. And then you start feeling negative feelings. And then you add on top of that, this guilt of why am I feeling this way? I'm so fortunate.
Yeah.
So few people are in this position, and yet I'm not happy all the time. What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
And that's where advice and feedback and insights from other people make you really able to say, okay, this is a process that I'm working through.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you start to think, gosh, why am I feeling this way? And am I taking this for granted?
Yeah. And I should be happier. What's going on? Like the word should, I know, is a very dangerous word. So we're already kind of getting into our feelings and reflections. But before we get further into that, thank you for those who left those comments. I really appreciate it. I'll put links in the show notes to the Dare to Draw Down blog, and then also to Economy and to campFI, which are all awesome events that are a great use of your time and money, in my opinion. But one thing I'll tease real quick is at the end of this episode, we're going to share a financial update of where we are 1 year into retirement with our spending, our annual spending, 12 months post-retirement, how much we've spent. So it's not a calendar year, but it's the exact 12 months after we left. And then we'll also share a net worth update on how that's looking. So wait for the end for that. Let's talk about our feelings before we talk about the math and the numbers, Greg. So we've already teased it and shared a lot, but do you want to elaborate a little bit more on what you were just saying on like how it started for you and like how you were feeling early on?
Sure. Yeah. As with any change, there was anxiety leading up to it, excitement and anxiety, and then the day came and you were, for me at least, I was on this high sort of. It came about in May, clearly, because it's been 1 year. That's an exciting time of year anyway, because the kids are getting out of school. There's lots of end of year events. Summer is right around the corner. We had a big trip coming up. So there was so much excitement for me around the fact that I could enjoy these things and not just physically be there, but really not be thinking about work and other stuff. So I was very excited. And, it was a great summer, but we were really busy throughout the summer. The first couple of months, all these end of school events, planning for our trip.
We were prepping to leave for 6 weeks for Europe with the kids. It was super busy.
Yeah. And then the trip was incredible. During that trip, we were moving every 3 to 4 days. It was 5 of us traveling, sightseeing. You did not have any time to really sit down and contemplate. Occasionally, if you're in a beautiful place, you might sort of have a minute to sit and think about things. But that whole trip was this kind of just constant movement. And it was great. It was an incredible trip, but it's not where you're going to all of a sudden kind of slow down and start to think through things. So it was really as we got back from the end of the summer, kids are back in school, you start to really reflect on things because you have days where all of a sudden you have this time that you didn't have before. And the structure of work and even the structure of the summer and the busyness and the kid activities goes away. And now all of a sudden you've got this unstructured time to sit and think and ponder, get into your emotions. And that's where I think some of these emotions started to come up, and just feeling grateful, but also feeling a little out of sorts, I guess, is a good way to put it.
Do you remember we used the word untethered a lot?
Right.
We both felt untethered, like we weren't tied down to something anymore. And not necessarily in a bad way, but just in a different, we wanted to be untethered, but we were feeling what untethered felt like. And Greg, I agree with you of just like that summer was so busy. We just didn't even have time to think about and absorb things. And we were distracted from having a moment to think about our feelings and even feel any sense of being untethered or listlessness or ennui, which is a term I learned about from people when I was saying like, I just have these weird feelings. And one of them is this term, this French word ennui, which is E-N-N-U-I, I believe.
It's ennui.
Ennui, sorry. That's the actual French way. I was like saying it the Southern way. Ennui.
I was going to hope you were going to cut the part of me correcting you because I don't want to sound like a jerk. But
oh, no, I think it's fine. You should. That didn't sound like a jerk.
Okay.
You're not a jerk just for saying don't sound like a jerk for correcting me. I love you, Greg. So, yeah, we were just both having these feelings of ennui. I can't even say it. Ennui.
Ennui. On top.
Ennui.
I think. Let's ask Siri. Siri, how do you pronounce ennui? Well, you're supposed to tell me. Hey, Alexa, how do you pronounce ennui?
I pronounce that unleash, but I'm always working on how I say things and I might not have it right.
Unleashed.
Siri, can you tell me how to say the word ennui? Okay, she's not going to help us, Greg.
Here.
We're on our own.
Ennui.
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 So it's not on, but it's not N, it's on.
On.
Ennui.
Ennui. Okay, I'm just going to use the word listlessness because that might actually be easier to
Doesn't sound that much better either.
Okay. It was like 5 minutes on how to pronounce the word.
Well, we're gonna cut
this is
all
what we
that.
have time for now, Greg. We have time for stuff like this.
Right.
You know? I want to get this right? I want to learn how to say this word. I don't really, I'm kidding. Okay. But we were the net is we were so busy all summer. And then we both, I think, went through a lazy/confused phase. And lazy has a negative connotation. Like we were resting for the first time in a long time. And we were like laying around. We were watching a lot of TV during the day, which I enjoy. It was a nice phase. It was a necessary phase on this journey to me. It's not what I wanted to do every day for the rest of my life. But I caught up on all TV. And there was a point where I was like, I don't think there's anything left for us to watch on Netflix or Hulu, which isn't true because there's always more. I'm shocked by the amount of content those companies can put out. We were just like lazy and we were, a little confused about how we were feeling, but not super confused because we had been given so many warnings that this was just going to be a weird time. And then for me, I quickly got into a phase where I was really overcommitted to things that I had committed to before I even left work. Like we had agreed to be on the swim council. I had agreed to take on a board seat on our neighborhood swimming pool group, which is actually a lot of work. And I agreed to do the sponsorships for swim team. We were volunteering with a nonprofit that Greg and I both have done some volunteering with. And then I'm trying to think. It's school. I was leading the spring play at one of my kids' school. And it's like a lot of work. There were just a bunch of things where I overcommitted, right? I have a tendency to do this. It's one of my learnings that I'll, get more into. But I was very busy with volunteer stuff. And that was bringing with it a whole bunch of feelings. It was giving me a good sense of accomplishment that I missed from work. But it also, I was more busy. I overcommitted myself, which is a learning. Like I'm very focused right now on not committing to more things. And it's really, 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 really hard for me because it is not in I just am trained to want to help and do things. And I know I can do things. And so when there's a need, I want to fill it. And I've got to stop. I mean, Greg, you're very aware of this and you see it every day and you're in a very kind way supportive of how I need to do less.
Well, it's not just that you take on things. You could take them on and create the minimally viable product. That is not you. If you take them on, you say, I will do this better than it's ever been done in the history of anything. And so you take on a lot and then you put 120% into everything you do, which is what makes you amazing. But it also clearly, I think, drains you and occupies a lot of your time. And so I think it's not taking as much on and maybe even some of the things you do take on, saying, not half-assing it, but doing enough to be successful, but not taking it on as if it's your only full-time job. And I think that's maybe the easiest way to sum it up. You take on many things and each of them you put into them as if it was the only thing you're doing.
Less is more. Yeah. And I have the same tendencies I had at work, even things that aren't quite the job I signed up for. Like I'll be at a board meeting and they need someone to do something, or they're not even quite asking, but like there's some topic comes up and I'm like, oh, I could do that. I can deal with that. And I would do that at work. I'm like, this isn't even my job. Right. And this is even the piece that I signed up for. And I do want to help, but I've got to start to use the cliche term. I've got to start putting the oxygen mask on myself first because I'm of no use to anyone. And it defeats the whole purpose of why I did this if I'm just burnt out on a bunch of volunteer stuff, honestly. And so that is one of my big insights is like, I have got to pull back on committing to all the things I'm doing for other people. And I've got to start doing more of the things that I want to do in early retirement. So Greg, one of the things that I want to mention that I think I know we both have in common, which is a big insight from us leaving work. Do you know what it is? Can you guess?
No.
What was like the first thing you said when you started to read off your insights to me earlier? And then I was like, stop. I want to do this. I want to hear them fresh.
Well, just that I don't miss work.
Yes, that's it. That is the one thing I will say we both, well, there's a lot of things we have in common, but one of the things I was most afraid of, not that I would miss work per se, but I was very afraid of like how much of my identity was tied up in work and that I would regret the decision. And of all the feelings I have had, I have not once missed work or felt like, oh, I wish, like, what did I do? Why did I walk away from all that money and that seniority and that esteem and respect I built up and the level I had and all these things I was afraid of? It hasn't panned out. It's incredibly liberating to recognize and appreciate that to me.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if I had the same level of esteem and respect built up as you did.
I think you did. I think you are just a very humble person, and I think you did, but keep going.
But I agree. I just don't miss it. I don't miss work at all. I miss some of the structure that work provided. I miss some of the feelings of productivity sometimes. It's not to say that I don't miss the feeling of doing something productive and constructive. The insight is that at some point, I will do that again in a capacity that I think is more fulfilling to me and hopefully more fulfilling to the world and the community I live in. But I don't miss my profession. I don't miss work. I think the points made earlier in the essay you read, I feel like I'm able to be myself more.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to fit the corporate mold, and I'm just so much happier not having to do that anymore. So yeah, don't miss it.
I 100% agree. And just to double click on something you just said, Greg, the sense of like pride and accomplishment of getting something done at work is something I was worried I would miss. And one of the things I have noticed is I get that through the volunteer roles I've been doing. Very much so. Like I've told this story to people before, but on the kids volleyball team, I volunteered to be like the team mom who organizes snacks and everything else. And at one point I was like, why are we all going to buy snacks? We have like we get very little notice of what the food situation is at each volleyball tournament. So it's usually we have like 2 or 3 days that we now know what we need to bring and what we're allowed to bring in and all this stuff. And I got to the point where I was telling the parents, I was like, hey, look, I'm already going to Sam's to buy stuff. So you can sign up to bring something and I'll send out the sign up sheet, or you can just Venmo me $10 and I'll get your snacks when I get my kids' snacks and I'll save you a trip to the grocery store. And there were a ton of moms who were like, thank you so much. This is way more efficient. Like this just is like one less thing I got to deal with this week. And I was like, cool. It's only a little bit of extra work for me. I'm happy to do it. And one of my goals in retirement was to help other working parents because I remember what it was like when there's just a million things you need to do. And I had certain friends, some of them were stay-at-home moms who would help me. And it was super freaking helpful. And I really appreciated it and noticed it. And I've gone out of my way to do things like that. And early on, I had some of the volleyball parents were like, hey, you're taking on too much. Like we should do. And I was like, I immediately told them, I was like, hey, Greg and we had just met these people. So I was like, hey, Greg and I left our jobs last year. And this was one of my goals. Like I'm available. I can do it. Like, please let me. And as soon as they knew that I wasn't like trying to juggle a full-time job and this, they were like, oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. And they like let me help, which I appreciated and was helpful context for them to understand. And I've gotten feedback a couple times from a few of the moms that went out of their way to like extra thank me and just say how helpful it was. And I'm like, that meant as much to me as when my old boss would give me feedback about some multi-million-dollar project I did and launched successfully. Like it's funny that the size doesn't matter, you know? I mean, it does matter sometimes, let's be clear, but sorry. Couldn't resist. In that case, like it doesn't matter what it was for. Like just getting feedback from those parents was just as valuable to me as getting feedback from our CEO. That has been a big insight for me is like I still want that sense of accomplishment and pride in doing something well done, but it doesn't have to be on some big scale.
Yeah, I think that's a great realization and important to know that sometimes even when you're making a small difference in someone's life, that can be just as meaningful and in many cases even more meaningful than when you feel like you're contributing to the big corporate goals.
Yeah. I will say there's one thing I do miss about work. I do miss the people. many people that I had just worked with for decades and relationships that I enjoyed. And I'm trying to do a better job keeping in touch with people. But I more mean, in addition to just missing the actual people I knew and those human beings as friends, I do miss the camaraderie and the shared purpose and banter of being on projects with people. And I'm getting that through many of my volunteer roles, but they're transient, right? It's a small thing we do in addition to everyone else having, often jobs and just busy lives. And so I miss that we all, we were like at work every day focused on similar goals. And there was a lot of camaraderie with that. But that's really the only thing I miss, I would say.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought. I do miss the people I worked with, but I will say I don't. Well, they were great people. I personally felt like the relationships weren't as meaningful as they could have been, given that it was all through the lens of work. And that's a personal thing for me. I think many people are able to get past that. Or I guess for me, I always sort of felt maybe it's the imposter syndrome or something, but at work, I was always so worried about how I was doing and trying not to feel incompetent or trying to, that's maybe overly self-critical, but trying to be as competent as I could, and that I don't think I was ever able to. I mean, I had great relationships at work, but I think some of those same people, I would enjoy relationships with them even more not being in a work setting.
Yeah, I don't know if this is if you would agree with this or if this is kind of your point, but I don't think you were able to be yourself at work as much as I was maybe able to.
Yeah, perhaps that's the case. I think to me, the being in a somewhat senior role too, I always felt very conscious of that in the way I related with people. And so anyway, yeah, I'm sure a lot of it was my own personal hangups, but either way, I am happy to not have to work through those anymore in that setting, at least.
Hey, Greg, do you remember a few weeks ago when I went to visit Chick-fil-A's corporate office?
I do.
One of our awesome listeners, Matt, who was a fan of Friends on Fire, and hopefully he's now a fan of Inside Out Money. But Matt was very kind, and he invited Mike and I to come out and have lunch with him and tour the office. And they have a very, purposefully built and social office. And it's also got an amazing cafeteria. They even had actually a lot of vegetarian and vegan options, which was nice. I kind of enjoyed just the buzziness. The office was all a buzz and it had a good energy to it. And I will say I kind of miss that a little bit, right? Now, I don't want to go to one every day. So it's I like the idea of it. And if I was in that mode of life, I was like, oh, you guys got a good thing going here. They're very well known for having a very strong corporate culture or just culture in general. When I was there, I had a little bit of nostalgia for work, but again, more on the social aspect of it and less on the, again, the camaraderie and accomplishing cool things. And there's always I'm a highly driven person. And so there's always a part of that that's attractive to me, but not more attractive than my freedom and flexibility, which is something I highly value and have back in my life for the first time in a long time. But I can appreciate both sides of it, I guess is my point. Okay, Greg, what are some of your other observations and insights?
Well, I think not working, I certainly noticed that I am less stressed out. So I carried a lot of stress from work that permeated a lot of aspects of my life. So I am very happy to not have that stress. Now, I do think as a somewhat anxious person, as Diana said, or kind of at least touched on, that you can be anxious about a lot of things. So once work goes, you can find other things to be anxious about. But I think a lot of those things are easier to push to the side than work stress that was ever present. Deadlines were constantly there. So I'm certainly a lot less stressed out. And what that does is it allows me to be more present. And I use the term a lot of emotional presence versus just physically present. Both of us had jobs that did allow a fair amount of flexibility. We could be there for a lot of our kids' events. But for me, even when I was there physically, I was emotionally maybe half there.
Yeah. You were thinking about something else and some meeting you had to get to after and some deadline you hadn't hit yet.
Exactly. When my parents would come to visit, I remember one year my mom was visiting and it coincided with something at work that just had me, was really worked up about it and frustrated. And it wasn't even a deadline. It was more of an interpersonal thing with one of the leaders at our company. And that whole trip went by and my mom left and I was just thinking, wow, I was with my mom, but never really with her. And so I've noticed that I am much more present. My dad was just here for a week, and it was great visiting with him. I was able to just be with him at his pace, and just enjoy the time and really just be there and not be thinking about the things I wasn't doing and, how behind I was going to be. And I really liked that. And I really appreciated it. And I think about that a lot with our aging parents and our kids that are aging in a different way. Time is limited. We've got a certain number of years before our kids head off to college, and not to be fatalistic, but our parents are aging. And I really want to soak up the time with them and enjoy it. And I'm much more able to do that now. So I'm really looking forward to my mom visiting later this summer and hopefully being able to do the same thing I was with my dad and just be there with her, not be short with her. I feel like I'm often short with my parents to no fault of their own. It's because I'm stressed out about other stuff and I take it out on them because I know they're going to be nice to me no matter how mean I am to them, which isn't fair. And so,
hey, Greg, that's what our teenagers do to us every day.
It's true.
Just
You're right.
So
you're right.
We
it's
should
full
remember
circle.
to be, But yeah, I agree with you. And when your dad was in town, it was literally the 5 days before Inside Out Money was launching, which we kind of knew, but maybe didn't fully appreciate. And I was less available than you because I just had a lot of things I still hadn't done yet. But I had extreme flexibility to do those things at different times of the day and go, we still did a lot. I still did a lot with you and your dad while he was here. And that feeling was even nice, right? Like when I was with him, I was very present and engaged. I believe I was able to really schedule when I did my other stuff versus when I hung out with you guys. And it's nice to have that much, way more flexibility and autonomy than we ever had when we were working for someone else.
Right. And you were engaged. My dad commented on it to you even, and to me. He said, in this trip, I feel like I've gotten to know the real Maggie more than I had in any of the past times that we had spent together.
Yeah.
And so clearly, I think you were 100% as busy as you were. It was things you were doing on your time. And so when you were there, you were present and you had engaging conversations with him. And I was really cool to see you guys bonding and talking about things and having those conversations that I know you've not been able to have with him before.
Yeah. Like when I went deep with him on getting rid of his financial planner and investing in index funds, he probably by the end was like, I got to go. Like we had a lot of like in-depth discussions, but that was one of them. Okay. So Greg, we'll eventually transition this discussion, but I want to hit a couple of things that for me, I was kind of, because I can't get certain work constructs out of my head. We always had this feedback model that I liked of WWW and EBI, which is what went well or what worked well, and even better if. So it was kind of like what's going well, and then what could we do better in a constructive way. And so for me, just to kind of hit some of the like what's working well for me, I am spending my time how I envisioned. I'm being active. I'm working out a good bit. I'm hanging out with my kids and you a lot and spending more time with my family and more present and engaged time. Like you said, I'm volunteering, which is one of my big goals, but the mixes aren't quite right. So the amount of time I'm spending on those things aren't quite where I want them to be, which we can talk about. But I am doing the general buckets of things I wanted to be doing. I love that we did our 6-week trip to Europe. We're prioritizing travel. We've been doing some like the Atlanta has a thing called the Beltline, which is just this like old railroad tracks that's kind of like a path now through, and there's a lot of like businesses and cool restaurants and stuff along the way. We've been doing some like Beltline adventure days. We've done some cool hikes during the day. I want way more of that for what it's worth. That's why I say the mix isn't right. But ultimately, I have been spending my time how I envisioned spending it. I just need to personally adjust the mix of it. But when I look back, I'm like, well, I'm doing the things I want to be doing and that I enjoy doing. I'm just doing like too much volunteering and not enough of the things I personally want to get done. Like I still haven't done our travel recap videos from our Europe trip, which I enjoy doing and really want to do, like making cool videos from all my drone footage and all of our photos and other stuff. And it's like, I haven't done that, but I've gotten $10,000 in sponsorships for the swim team, which is cool, but I would like to do a little bit more things on like Maggie's list. I'm Maggie, by the way.
Yeah, well, I like the way you said that because it's neat to see that you are doing many of the things you said you wanted to do and that are bringing some joy and meaning to this post-retired life. But I agree. I think adjusting the time mix would be good for you and for us.
Yeah. So on that note, my biggest even better if is that I've just overcommitted myself, which I probably said a few times in this episode. But one of the insights I've had, and I think Diana referenced this in her comment a bit, and actually Diana and Jolene, who we were talking about at the beginning, both referenced this in different ways. But ultimately, I have the same like tendencies and proclivities that I had when working. They're just now coming forward in my new life, but the same, it's like I'm the same person, right? It's not like I just left work and I'm now all of a sudden I'm not going to overcommit to things. I overcommitted to things at work. I was just getting paid to overcommit to things. And now I overcommit to things that I'm not getting paid to do. And so that's an example, but I'm just an overcommitter, right? My eyes are bigger than my stomach, right? Isn't that the phrase? Like, I think I can take on more than I can, right? And I take on too much. I burn myself out. I hit a wall eventually where I'm then just annoyed and resentful at everything I've committed to doing, myself included. And so that to me has just been a big insight, is that is just how I operate. And I need to work on that and try to evolve and change my habits and not think that, I thought magically leaving work, I would just be, I don't know, just magically different somehow.
Yeah, it would just fix
everything. Yeah, and it doesn't. I still have to work on me. And if anything, to the point that we've talked about, and Diana made this point, work was a huge distraction to not be able to notice. I was so busy, I didn't get to notice and pick up on these things. And I will say I'm much more able to notice and reflect on these things now, which is helpful and is the first step towards making improvements. I'm also ironically way less on top of things than I used to be, I feel like. And you were like being very nice yesterday when I was like I was really annoyed yesterday about forgetting something important at one of my kids' schools. And I'm just like, you were very nice, Greg, because you were just like, take it easy. Like you're, like you got a lot going on, you're whatever. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm terrible. Like I just was like really frustrated. One of my insights is like, I am not at a desk every day, all day anymore. And when I was like looking at a calendar constantly. Everything was time boxed. I just like, now I can barely handle like one scheduled appointment in a day. Like it just throws my whole vibe off for the day. And then I'm like annoyed at myself that I committed to something. And so it's just interesting because I'm not in front of a computer all day. I'm not in front of a calendar all day. And I forget things and I'm less on top of things, and things that involve filling out 50 camp forms, which was like not always an easy thing to squeeze into a work day, but I just was already in front of a computer and I could procrastinate on some work project by filling out 50 camp forms. Now I have to like step away from going for a walk or working out or some other volunteer commitment I've made that's a like out and about physical activity to come sit at a computer and do something. And that has just made me less on top of businessy stuff. I don't know how to phrase it, but you know what I mean? Like the paperwork of my life, which there's still a lot. There's just a lot. It's like just managing 3 kids and a house and we still have rental properties. So, I mean, we have, and I have a podcast and right, like there's still a lot of like quote work. I don't even like to call it work, but things that we have to do. And it's harder for me to stay on top of those things. And that's a, unstructured, untethered. I've got to find new systems. And, that's one of my commitments is like, I just need to get myself more organized than I am right now. I fell off an organization cliff when I retired and I just became super unstructured and couldn't make me, I just forget about commitments I have now. And I don't like it. I hate that feeling. So I need to get more organized and just on top of stuff. And I'm way more behind on email. Like my email inbox is a mess. It's just a bunch. I'm getting like stressed out talking about this, but you get the idea.
Along those lines, I think for me, I completely agree with your point of you leave work and it doesn't just magically fix all of the things your personality traits. And I completely agree. As I stated, I still find things to be anxious about. I will say they're not as angst inducing as work was, but things replace that. And for me, I think I've always been someone that could fall victim to analysis paralysis. And so I'm still that person. I still sometimes procrastinate more than I should and have these ideas of things I want to do, but don't know which to start first. And so don't do any of those. So for me, now that I've had time to relax, rejuvenate, get involved in some things that I enjoy, my goal is to really try to figure out what I'm most passionate about, ways that I want to give back that are meaningful for me. And I want to figure out how to spend my time most meaningfully. And so I don't have all the answers yet, but that is really kind of my goal for this next year, is how to spend my time meaningfully, what I want to do with my time, figure out the hobbies that are things that are.
I really like the word intentionally also.
Yeah.
Like, I know when you say meaningfully, I just think of intentionally. And I think we are in different places in that journey, which is fine and interesting. Of just, I also have too many things I want to do, but I'm kind of like doing a lot of them, but I'm doing too many of them. And I think you are still trying to figure out where, like, you've been more thoughtful. You've relaxed more than I have in many ways also. Greg, one of the more meaningful ways I actually want to spend my time is just getting organized on my finances and my life. And just there's so many things I envisioned getting more organized and minimalized in our life around stuff and files and just life organization stuff that I have not made progress on. It's actually gotten worse because I've taken on so many new projects, many that I haven't even mentioned here, that I'm even more disorganized now because I just have so much stuff going on. And so one of my big goals is I just want to spend more time like on myself and on the things I want to do. Like I have all these bucket list items. I think we did a whole episode on Friends on Fire talking about this, but all these things I want to do, like fun stuff, life organization stuff, a bunch of things. And I haven't done nearly as much of that stuff as I would like to do. And not to check something off a to-do list, but because they're intentional, meaningful things to me that I want to do. Like even making drone videos from our travels last summer. Like that was important to me. It's something I want to do for documentation and sharing with family and friends and other things. And I haven't done that yet. And that's annoying to me. You know, it is what it is. I'm not going to beat myself up over it, but just in the spirit of reflections, I want to be more on top of things that matter to me, in addition to continuing to help and serve in other ways in my community and with friends and family. Like I said a couple of times, the balance is off and I need to get that balance back on track. But one of the things that, just to sum up all of my insights about the last year, is ironically, I have spent too much of my first year like I spent my last 20 years. And that to me is a big personal insight, but I'm not beating myself up over it. It's year one. This is a long journey. I expect and hope many, many, many more early retired years ahead of me. And this is a transition, but I am doing too much to feel accomplished and things for other people. It's like how I'm trained. I'm a people pleaser. We could get into all of the whys there, but I'll leave that for another discussion. It's just the insight of I am who I am. I can't change overnight, and I can't think that just taking me out of corporate America and putting me in civilian life, if you will, is just going to like magically change all of my tendencies and habits and proclivities. Like I said, I'm just more and more aware of that, and that I need to make some very thoughtful and active changes to live the life that I want to be living and stop doing some of the things that I clearly keep doing inside or outside of corporate America, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It does. And I think everything you're saying is really resonating with me. And it gets back a little bit to the point that Jolene made around the quote, I think, that she included. And it really is. I think we all think, man, when I retire and I have more time, then I'll be living my best life.
Yeah.
Yes, the time is certainly a key ingredient to that, but you still need the recipe to make that life your best life. And I think, yeah, that is a realization that just having time alone is not going to fix that. And you can fill your time with all kinds of things. Doom scrolling on Twitter, for example, perhaps.
Are you speaking from personal experience,
Yes,
Greg?
Yes, certainly. Spend too much time.
You make that joke, but you had to sort of like cut yourself off of like reading about politics online for a while because...
When I did that last May, actually, and I'm now at the point where I think I want to do that again. But the point just being that it still takes deliberate work to live your best life. And I say that I'm not I don't feel like I'm living my best life yet, but I know that I want to. And I know that it takes reflections like we're doing now, and then being proactive about it and really thinking about how you want to spend your time. And so I think I'm excited about that over the next year. And I think, as you said, to just kind of sum it up, leaving work will do a lot of things. It will give you more time, but it won't automatically translate to changing you into, getting rid of all of your character flaws, so to speak, or your personality traits that are not as productive as they could be. And you won't automatically be living your best life. It takes a focus to do that, and something that we're going to continue to have to pause and reflect on and say, what do we want out of life, and how do we spend our time intentionally to do that?
I think intentional is the word, because for me, year one was a transitional period for us. And for me, I want year two to kind of be a little bit more about me and like what I need to get in a better place for me. And a little bit of I know sometimes I'll use the word like selfish, and you'll correct me, Greg, but like that I'm not being selfish. But like, yeah, I just want to kind of focus on me a little bit more. And I think if I do that, I will be better for everyone else around me, including you and our kids and all the people I want to volunteer and help and stuff like that. Okay, now we're going to talk about money. There's no beautiful segue or transition there. One of my fears in leaving, aside from my identity, was money related. Like, will we have enough money? Have we saved enough? And I always knew we could go back to work. I mean, that's what alleviated it is. We're both highly reemployable. We can make more money someday if and when we want to. But I think the financial side of it has been fascinating. So I want to share two things. I want to talk about our net worth and how it's changed, which we'll talk about in a minute. But I first want to talk about our expenses, which is like hot off the press because we've been behind on this. Well, Greg does a lot of our expense organization and categorization and cleaning up all the junk that goes into Mint, which is what we use to track our expenses. And then he does a lot manually in Excel after it's organized and categorized. Thank you for your role in that, because I know it's a tedious job. And sometimes you curse at this computer or Mint. I'm not sure who you're cursing at.
Just whoever,
World,
whatever.
Yeah. Not me though. It's not me. Okay. So we just like literally 2 nights ago, we knew the grand total of what we spent our first 12 months out of retirement. And I was a little shocked by the number. I had a little bit of sticker shock. Do you want to say what it was, Greg?
Yes. So our first year expenses, May 22 through April of 23, excluding net child support expenses, because we just always exclude that, was, drumroll, 101,000. Actually, almost 102 if you round up.
Let's round up.
So 102,000. More than I think we would ideally like it to be, less than it has been in past years. But what I will say is 2 huge buckets of that were things that will not be as high in future years. One being travel. Spent 28,000 on travel, and we knew that was going to be big last year because of our Europe trip. And
yeah.
that was we're going to blow it out of the water kind of to celebrate.
Yeah, we didn't go like crazy, but we certainly were not trying to like budget travel that trip in any way.
Right.
And we let the kids, we splurged a lot with the kids. We were also in a super celebratory mood and mode. And yeah, we were not trying too hard to save money on that trip. So we had a big expensive travel year. But again, that's spending in line with my values. So I'm okay knowing that we spent 30 grand on travel. But we're not going to do that every year, but we'll probably do that again at some point.
The other big item was medical. And a big portion of that is that up through December of 2022, we were both on Cobra. So we were paying pretty expensive premiums.
Yeah, we paid 6 to 7 months of 2 people on Cobra. And that was how much?
So through December 2020, we were paying $1,300 a month total on our Cobra premiums. So it was quite expensive. And then in the tail end of the year, I got LASIK surgery. So that was another big expense that is a once in a lifetime expense.
Yeah.
So I believe our medical will go down, other than some braces expenses that we will incur this year.
2 people, a child and an adult getting braces, which is not in these numbers yet. So that because that hit after that just hit like a week ago. Yeah. So, there's a couple things that are big in there. Now there's always stuff that pops up where there'll probably be something in the next 12 months where we're like, well, that was unique, like 2 people getting braces. So there's kind of always something. When you first told me the total, Greg, I had like major sticker shock and I was like, oh my God, I feel like we've been spending a lot of money lately, but it was more, well, part of the reason is you told me the number with child support. And I forget, for comparable purposes, I forget that the number that always sticks in my head is the one without child support, because that's the number we would always share on Friends on Fire. So just to put it in context, and again, these aren't perfectly comparable time periods because this was May to April. This is our first 12 months being early retired, and all the other years we do are 12 months of January to December. And there's certain things that hit, like taxes always hit in the fall. But in 2021, for comparison, without child support as a family, we spent $81,656. And there's a whole episode on Friends on Fire where we do the whole breakdown of that. And then in 2022, we actually spent $107,000. So we're down compared to that, right? If you look at it that way. So it's all in perspective. But so we're not actually as bad as I was thinking and bad's all relative. I don't mean bad, but just as high as I was thinking we were. I've always in my head, and when we plan for early retirement and stuff, said we spend about $100,000 a year, right? Again, that excludes child support, but we're on track with that, even with some of the big expensive things you mentioned. I do think when you did the summary though, which we track our expenses, but I wouldn't say we review them as often as we could or should. And that's one of the things we said we want to do a little bit more closely, because for both of us, when we have the numbers in front of us, we are better about our spending.
Right.
And we've gotten a little loose, right? I think in this transitional year, as we've discussed, it's been a little wonky emotionally at times. And what do you do when your emotions are out of whack? You spend money because it makes you feel good. And I think we've gotten a little, I've heard people say that when they quit working, they spend less money. I'm not sure who those people are and what's happening with them. But when I have more time on my hands, like we go do these Beltline adventure days. It involves eating out. I guess we could pack a picnic, but half the fun part is all the good vegan food that's on the Beltline now. And so I find myself spending more money. I pick up Kate from school and she's in a good mood and there's something to celebrate. And I'm like, oh, let's go to Starbucks. I want one too. And so there's just, it's like I have more time on my hands and more flexibility to go do little fun things and take the kids for ice cream, and we'll walk to a neighborhood spot. And it's just, I don't know, it's like easier to spend money now. I was better at saving money when I was busy working. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, when you have more time, you have more time to go spend money.
Yeah.
But I think overall, we've not done too bad with that. I think, outside of a couple big expenses, our restaurant spending has gone up, but not that dramatically.
Not crazy. Yeah.
And also inflation has gone up so much too with restaurants. It's hard to tell exactly. But I think we've done okay. I think we can certainly do better, but I think we've not gone completely crazy on it. But totally agree that we need to look at the expenses more regularly, because then you can make more real-time adjustments as opposed to looking back and saying, oh, wow, we really blew the budget over the last 6 months.
Yeah.
It's much easier to, correct real time. So that's something I'm going to be much more diligent about.
Yeah. I think we're on the same page in the sense of we both had a little bit of sticker shock, but we also aren't that far off track and we're nowhere, we're not outside of like what we can afford to spend. I think we more know what truly makes us happy and if we truly needed some of those experiences and stuff and other things. And so I think that's where we more challenge ourselves of we know that we can do better and still be just as happy. And I think that's probably where we want to get to a little bit, is just more intentional and thoughtful spending. There's also a bunch of bigger expenses that I really want to better optimize, like what we're paying for insurance on some things. Like I haven't messed with that in a few years. And I costed it out like, 3 or 4 years ago. And I know there's some things we could do if I put enough time and energy into it. And that's an example of like when I say I want to spend more time on me in the next 12 months, that's an example, right? I want to more diligently dig into some of those expenses and make sure that we are getting the best rates for homeowners insurance and that we've raised our deductibles enough and stuff like that, which I think we're probably at 80% or 90% optimized on, but I'd like to get to 100%. And so I think there's still some things like that we can shave off. When your dad was here, I heard, he didn't say this to me, which I would have been totally fine if he did, but you told me later that he made a comment about how much the kids and us leave lights on. It's mainly the kids. I would just like to go on record saying, because I walk around the house and I'm like, who left all these lights on? Just little things like that, even on, we could be a little bit more streamlined in some of our energy usage and other things.
Definitely.
I already control the thermostat like hardcore, so that one is very well optimized. We spent some very hot 80-degree days with like no air conditioning on, and I finally broke down and turned on the air a couple weeks ago, maybe a week ago. But anyways, there's some stuff we can continue to improve and optimize in there. And then the last thing is, we don't share our net worth. And for those who don't know, Greg and I actually do have separate finances. But I say that, but really, we're completely transparent with each other about them. We have joint accounts. We share the expenses of many things in our life. But when Greg wants to go buy, and actually I should probably say me, because I probably do this more than you, Greg. When I want to go buy some new pair of $150 running shoes, I don't run it by you. Well, actually, I usually discuss that anyways, just because I like talking about stuff. But it's my money and it's my decision. And when you want to go buy some supplement that you read about and are excited about, I don't question you because it's your money, right? And so we have our money and we do a lot together, but we also have separate money and we track a lot of things separately. And some of that comes from being divorced and just what works for us. And we did a whole episode on Friends on Fire about split versus combined finances, which is a good one to listen to if you're curious about it. But I don't even like using the term split finances or separate finances because I think ours are so intertwined and we communicate so heavily about it. But my point is, we both track.
We're very in sync financially, despite having quote unquote separate finances. I think we are on a singular financial plan.
Yes. And we're probably, I would argue, more in sync than the average couple financially. Like we talk about it often. I know every single one of your accounts. You know every single one of my accounts. You have full access. And, it's not like I have secret money stashed away somewhere that you know of. But my point is we track our net worth separately. I update mine monthly on the 1st because that is the type of person I am. Greg updated his 5 minutes ago because that is the type of person he is. Well, not 5 minutes ago, an hour ago before we recorded this. I was like, hey, I need you to go update your net worth. And you were pleasantly surprised. So the thing I want to say about our net worth is we don't share our net worth on what the actual number is. We don't share it publicly, but we both track it. And it's pretty cool to see that for both of us, our net worth has actually stayed flat or increased since, or they both increased, Greg, right?
Right. Yeah. Since May, because, and some of that is, the market was down so heavily in May of last year that we've seen a rebound there. But it is very reassuring that we've both seen our net worth increase in a year of not working.
Yeah. We both have less cash, but our overall net worth, our rental real estate's doing well. And we're pretty conservative in like how we estimate those in our net worth. And the market's doing well. Those aren't, realized gains yet, in my opinion, but it feels good to see that your net worth has increased, in a year that you're not working. So even with that $107,000 plus spent, we are still in as good of a financial position, if not better, than we were last year. And that feels really good. I remember when Purple Life retired. She's a very, I think, pretty well-known blogger in the early retirement space. And she retired a few years before us. She would post her net worth and it was like constantly increasing. It's really cool to see. And it always made me feel better that I was like, oh, okay, I'm like less scared. And she's someone who we interviewed on Friends on Fire. And she's someone who made me feel less scared about just taking the plunge and leaving my job. So shout out to a Purple Life. But she shows her real numbers and I love it. And it's just cool. It is cool to see that with your own money and see, oh yeah, that wasn't just her. I have more money technically today than I did a year ago. And I made good money and I maxed out my 401k and I haven't put a single additional dollar in my 401k, but it is worth more than it was a year ago. That is the power of compound interest at work. While I'm not working, my money is working for me because I saved it and I put it in things that are making money.
Yeah, I agree. It's very reassuring and it makes me feel, certainly helps reduce the angst. And of course, as they always say, the past performance of the market doesn't indicate what it'll do in the future, but it's definitely good to see it increase over the past year.
Yeah. And I'm okay mentally. I know that if we hit a recession or something like that might go down for a couple years, but I know and I believe like long term it will be okay. And we can take a hit for a couple years and we'll be okay. And that's, in our projections and our plans. But it just in the spirit of just sharing what it feels like a year into retirement, it feels really good to know that your net worth is the same, if not better than it was a year ago when you no longer make any money and you just spent $107,000 living. Okay. This has been a long episode, Greg, but we had a whole year to reflect upon. So the fact that we could do that in a little over an hour is solid, I think.
Well, it's been good for me personally, because sometimes it takes something like this to prompt me to sit down and really think about the last year and what takeaways are. And then even talking about it, I think is really helpful. And I think having the input from both Jolene and Diana and then our conversation has really kind of helped crystallize some takeaways for me. And I think it's so cool while we each have our own personal journeys, I think there's a lot of parallels in what each of us have experienced. And it's maybe played out differently based on our own personalities, but ultimately a similar journey. I think I'm excited for year 2.
I am too, Greg. And look, I'm getting emotional real quick, but I'll tell you why. And I'm going to forget my point why I'm telling you like what double made me cry today. So did I tell you I started crying this morning?
No.
When I took Kate to school? It was like Kate was probably embarrassed, but it's the last Friday that our youngest is in elementary school. And this is an elementary school that all 3 of our kids have been through, that I went to when I was a kid. And I just love it. It's in our community. I volunteer a ton. I don't even I feel like I don't even sign in there anymore. I just like walk in. Nobody questions while I'm there. And I like do a lot there. And I love it. And I just feel very like emotionally tied to this school. And it's sad. They're like growing up. And so, and I walked Kate to school this morning and I'm like half asleep and too tired. So we're walking to school and I'm reflecting with her that it's the last Friday because there's only 3 more days of school next week. And so on Monday, I said it was the last Monday when we were walking to school and she was like, no, it's not. There's another Monday. And I was like, oh, sorry. On Thursday and Friday, it'll be the last Thursday and Friday. I had to get corrected by a 5th grader about how the days of the week work. So I was like, it's the last Friday. And I was reflecting upon that with her on the walk to school. And then we get to school and we like cross the crosswalk. And so she's kind of going in and she sees a bunch of her friends and they all like run up to each other and hug each other and are excited to see each other. And I was like telling them it's the last Friday. And I like start crying, I couldn't stop. And I'm like trying to take a picture of her and her friends. And one of the counselors that's like at the crosswalk is like, are you okay? So he thought something was like wrong. And I was like, the other teacher that was standing there realized I was crying because I'm emotional. And she was like, oh no, she's just like, it's her last whatever. And so, anyways, I just was like crying and I'm like, the crossing guard as I'm leaving is like looking at me and I'm just like, I'm fine. I'm just emotional. But I was starting to get emotional about this too, Greg. And my long-winded way of getting to this, which has helped me to stop crying also, is my last reflection, which wasn't even in my notes, I was realizing it as you were just talking, Greg, is I'm really appreciative and have enjoyed being on this journey with you. Because that's another... Okay. Keep in mind, we're in 2 different rooms also. So you're like, I'm not even like next to you right now. That's another very cool piece of this journey is that we did this together. And I've really appreciated having a friend on this journey with me. And we are more than a friend, you know what I mean? But like a life partner on this journey with me. It's been really cool. And I appreciate all of the times that we have gone on walks and talked about our feelings. And I remember for years, and we often would talk about this while on walks, because that's just when we had a chance to connect one-on-one. But for years, we would go on walks and I would talk about how stressed I was at work. And you were always like very kind, but kind of like, hey, why don't we do something about this? And I just appreciate that we've been on this journey together over the last year and that I'm excited for the next year, just like you said, like it's nice to reflect upon this. And I'm excited that we're on this journey together. And I think it's an extra cool and privileged position we're in to have been able to do this together and to experience this with our kids together. And like you said, with, family coming in town and with our family that's here. And there's so many learnings I've had over the past years, and it's nice to reflect upon them. I'm excited for the future. I'm excited that you're a part of this future. I'm excited that we are doing this together was my point, my long-winded point.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I don't think I would have taken this plunge without you. And it's been great doing it with you. And at the same time, too, I think being able to go through these emotions together has been great, too. And we've talked about other couples that have done it at separate times. And, they're going through this and with the other partner, maybe if they're behind them, maybe not completely being able to, they certainly sympathize with them, but they're not there. And we've been there together and it's been really cool to kind of talk through those emotions together.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I've pulled myself back together again long enough to say goodbye. But thank you. I hope this has been interesting and helpful to people in some way. And yeah, I think we can wrap it up. This was a long one.
Yeah, it has been, but it's been, as I said, I think very helpful for me and for us, and hopefully for anyone else out there who's listening. And thanks again for the feedback from our campFI friends and just anyone that's given us advice along the way.
Agreed. I will end with one additional comment that came in from a campFI friend, actually, Greg, is there was a little exchange from Diana's very insightful post that she shared, but then there was a couple people going back and forth. And at one point, this guy, Alan, said, I've oscillated between contentment and uncertainty, but I just spoke with a coworker yesterday about how things are going. And let's just say I'm now in the relief, thank God I did that stage, which I just thought was kind of funny. We can end on that.
Yeah, that is.
So we can end on that. And yeah, thank goodness we did this. I'm very happy. I'm excited for the future. And I'm glad we are on this journey together, Greg. I love you very much.
I love you too.
Okay. I don't know if I'm going to tell all of our co-hosts that I love them at the end of every episode, but I'll reserve that one for you. Okay. Thank you guys for listening. I know your time is limited and valuable. We truly appreciate you spending some of it with us. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please give us a written review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We would really appreciate it.
We also encourage you to share this episode with a friend or family member to encourage ongoing discussions about money.
Or if your friends and family just want to hear me crying and professing my love for Greg, share that too.
You can also subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
If you have any thoughts or questions, we would love to hear from you, and you can leave us a voicemail or text us at 404-981-3370, or you can hit us up on Instagram. Okay. Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Maggie.
Bye.
Bye.